The script should be read in a conversational, engaging, slightly exasperated, but ultimately triumphant tone. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I've got a couple of stories today that still make my blood boil years later because they are just textbook examples of HOA madness. The kind of stuff you wouldn't believe if it wasn't true. Seriously, one story involves the HOA actually using concrete barriers to try and trap me on my own property, and the other? Well, the other one started with my beautiful vintage car and ended with a full-blown financial forensic audit that blew the entire board sky high. Grab a coffee, buckle up because these are wild. So, let's start with the one that literally locked me in my house. My wife and I bought our first home a few years ago in a nice area we call the Lakes. We knew we were 2 blocks outside the boundary of the much larger, fancier HOA next door, which was called Maplewood Estates. We were fine with that. We didn't want the fees or the hassle. When we closed on the house, the title company confirmed, you have the right to join if they expand, but absolutely zero obligation to do so. Peace of mind, right? We moved in, spent a couple of blissful years just paying our mortgage and fixing up the yard, and honestly, I completely forgot Maplewood Estates even existed. Then the letters started. They weren't just standard expansion flyers. They were oddly aggressive. They showed a map of how they were absorbing 5 new blocks, including ours, and demanding we sign up. I politely declined, citing my original closing paperwork, and asked them not to contact me again. I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, there was a sharp, insistent knock on my door, and standing there was this woman, maybe in her early 60s, wearing a blazer despite the 90-degree heat, holding a clipboard like it was a scepter. I'll call her Brenda. Brenda introduced herself as one of the Maplewood board members, and she had this unsettling, pinched smile. She started right in on my refusal letter. I explained very calmly that I was working off some serious student loan debt, and frankly, I didn't have the disposable income for HOA dues, even if I wanted to join, which I didn't. Her smile actually widened, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Oh, we can work with you on that, dear," she cooed. "We have payment plans. It's a very small investment in your property value." I shut it down fast. I told her, "Look, Brenda, I've been very clear. I appreciate you coming by, but I don't want any more letters, and I won't be joining. That's all I'm comfortable saying." She just nodded, gave me one last icy look, and left. I genuinely thought I'd handled it well. But that woman, man, she was obsessed. The letters started coming again, but they weren't invitations anymore. They were bills. They were demanding 2 years' worth of past dues, treating me like a delinquent member. I initially ignored the first one, thinking it was a clerical error. But when the second one arrived, demanding the exact same amount and threatening action, I wrote back a furious email. I reiterated that my property was never part of their jurisdiction, and they had absolutely no right to solicit money from me. A few days later, I found a formal, typed final warning notice taped to my door. It was the last straw. I realized they were actively targeting me now, but I still didn't think they had the legal power to do anything real. I didn't pay. The deadline came, and the deadline went. Then, one Tuesday morning, around 7 a.m., I was tying my tie when I heard this enormous grinding sound in the driveway. I look out the window, right? And there's a big flatbed construction truck, and 2 guys in hard hats are unloading these massive, precast concrete road barriers. I'm talking the kind they use on highways. They're positioning them to completely block the opening of my driveway. I threw on a jacket and stormed out there. "Excuse me, what in the hell is going on?" I demanded. One of the workers pointed toward a sleek, black sedan parked on the street. "You need to talk to her," he mumbled. "And who should be standing there, looking smug as a cat who swallowed a canary? Brenda. Brenda, what do you think you're doing? You can't block my private property." She actually adjusted her blazer, that same horrifying smile plastered on her face. "You were properly warned about not paying your dues to Maplewood Estates, Mr. My name. As the HOA's designated chief enforcement officer, I am invoking my right to secure the assets, or lack thereof, until the debt is settled." She called herself the chief enforcement officer. I nearly choked. I told her flat out that she was no cop, that she had no jurisdiction, and I wasn't part of her pathetic little expansion. That's when she hit me with the kicker. Well, according to our expanded charter, you technically are. Now you can go back inside, get your checkbook, and we can get the situation fixed. That's when I snapped back inside, grabbed my phone, and called the real police. I told the dispatcher I had a woman impersonating a police officer and holding my vehicle hostage with concrete barriers. I then called my boss, said I had a mandatory civil dispute I couldn't drive away from, and settled in a wait. When the two uniformed officers arrived, one immediately went to Brenda, and the other came to me. As I was giving my statement, the female officer walked over to her partner, pinching the bridge of her nose. "This lady," she whispered but loud enough for me to hear, "is claiming she was given full authority to police the community by the HOA. She is absolutely not backing down." The male officer just looked at me, totally bewildered. I told them my biggest fear was that she was talking about being the chief of their HOA police force, meaning there were others who might try this. The actual police acted fast. They ordered the construction workers to remove the barriers immediately. Brenda went ballistic, screaming at the cops about constitutional rights and property law. As they opened the patrol car door for her, she saw me, lunged, and shrieked something about me not being special and needing to pay what I owed. The female officer tackled her to the ground before she could even get within arm's reach of me. I pressed charges for everything. That incident kicked off almost a year of legal hell, but it was worth every second. During the investigation, it came out that I was far from the only person Brenda and 3 other board members had done this to. They were running a full-blown extortion scheme, targeting people just outside the boundary to fleece them for money to fund their expansion fantasies. Some neighbors paid, some moved, but I fought. Brenda and her cronies were ultimately found guilty of trespassing, extortion, harassment, and, yes, impersonating an officer. They had to pay massive fines, restitution to every neighbor they hit, and they each got 5 years in prison. 5 years. I'll never forget the cold, dead look in Brenda's eyes when the sentence came down. It was like she was hearing the weather forecast. It just goes to show you what kind of sociopaths can end up running these organizations. Now, you'd think that would be enough HOA drama for a lifetime, right? Wrong. The universe apparently decided I needed a masterclass in petty bureaucracy because a few years later, I moved into a different area, a community called the Canyons. This time, I knew I was in the HOA, but the fees were low and the rules seemed reasonable, focused mainly on yard maintenance and keeping up appearances. Or so I thought. My pride and joy is a 1985 Datsun 280Z. It's my baby. I inherited it from my uncle. I do all the maintenance myself, and it's pristine, waxed, no rust, runs like a dream. It's old, yes, but it's a beautiful piece of automotive history. 6 months after moving in, I got a violation notice. The offense? My car was in violation of community standards. According to the notice, cars parked in driveways needed to be current models, no more than 10 years old. I was confused, then infuriated. I had read the entire covenant. Nothing, absolutely nothing about car age. I called the HOA office. The woman who answered, who sounded like she hated Tuesdays more than life itself, confirmed the violation. When I pressed her to show me the specific bylaw, she mumbled something about it being in the updated bylaws approved 3 months ago and claimed all homeowners should have received a copy. I told her I hadn't, and I demanded they email me the relevant section immediately. She just told me I had 14 days to move the car or face a $100 fine, and then another $25 every day after that. I asked why. Older vehicles, she droned, bring down property values. I started digging. I went through all my paper and digital files. Nothing. Then I went to my neighbor, an old-timer who'd been there forever. He hadn't gotten any update either, and he pointed something out. What about the 67 Mustang 2 doors down? The guy restores it. It's always in his driveway. They haven't said a word to him. Sure enough, there sat a drop-dead gorgeous, but obviously 58-year-old Mustang. I went to the next HOA meeting arm for battle. When I brought up the Datsun, President Hawthorne, a guy whose face seemed permanently set in a state of annoyance, cleared his throat. The board voted on that amendment, he insisted. I pointed out the Mustang. His face went deep red. That car, he sputtered, is a classic. Yours is just old. That was the moment. The light bulb went off. I replied, cutting him off. So the rule isn't about age, Mr. Hawthorne. It's about your personal taste and selective enforcement. My bylaws say cars must be in good working order with no visible rust or damage. My Datsun meets that standard. The Mustang meets that standard. Your board has failed to properly communicate a new bylaw, and you are enforcing it selectively. That's not how an HOA works. The meeting got heated. A few people clapped for me. Others, clearly board allies, backed Hawthorne up. But the notice stood. The next day, I got another letter, this one with a $150 fine for argumentative and disruptive behavior at the HOA meeting. That was the final trigger. I called my cousin, who got me in touch with a lawyer specializing in HOA disputes. My lawyer was direct. This is textbook selective enforcement and failure to follow proper legal procedure. We're going to hit them hard. We filed a lawsuit claiming selective enforcement, failure to follow procedure, and harassment. The key move? We requested every single HOA record for the last 5 years, board meeting minutes, violation notices, and, most importantly, financial statements. Within days, the HOA's lawyer contacted mine, sounding surprisingly conciliatory. They offered to drop all fines and the car violation immediately if I dropped the lawsuit. They're terrified, my lawyer said. We countered, drop all fines, pay my legal fees, and agree to a full forensic audit of HOA operations by an independent third party. Their response was instantaneous. They refused the audit flat out. My lawyer smiled. That tells us everything we need to know. We pushed forward. In the preliminary hearing, the judge, an older woman with the sharpest eyes I've ever seen, asked the HOA's lawyer point blank, "Can you produce evidence that this rule about car age was properly adopted and communicated to all homeowners?" The lawyer stammered about broad discretion and interpreting the rules. The judge cut him off. That wasn't my question. Produce the evidence. 2 weeks later, the board couldn't produce any record of a formal bylaw change. The car rule was just something President Hawthorne and his buddies had made up on the fly to harass people they didn't like. But the bigger bomb dropped with the financial records. The audit revealed the board president and the treasurer had been systematically giving themselves stipends and funding personal expenses, trips, dining, education, all disguised as board expenses, which was explicitly forbidden by the HOA charter. They had been using the excessive fines collected by selective enforcement as their slush fund. The judge was furious. She ordered the immediate suspension of the current board's financial authority and appointed a temporary receiver. The full audit confirmed years of corruption. Ultimately, the judge ordered the entire board to resign, mandated a new election overseen by an independent body, and forced the former board members to repay every single cent they had misappropriated, plus all my legal fees. In the aftermath, the community was in shock, but then they rallied. Several neighbors asked me to run for the new board. I hesitated. I just wanted to fix my Datsun in peace. But I realized I couldn't walk away. I ran, I won, and I am now the treasurer of the Canyons HOA, working with a great new team focused entirely on transparency and fairness. And yes, my 1985 Datsun 280Z is not just proudly parked in my driveway. It's explicitly protected by our new, clearly written bylaws. So, I put it to you guys, was I the jerk for going scorched earth, taking an HOA to court, and causing a total financial and structural overhaul, all over a ridiculous dispute about my car? Some people say the legal fees cost the community money, and I created tension. I say, if the collateral damage is the destruction of a corrupt system, it's worth it every single time. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Drop a like if you think I was right to fight, and subscribe to hear about what the new board is up to next.